and welcome to another edition of What's the Message? I am your host, Claudia Allen, and I am joined always with my co-host, my editor-in-chief, my commander-in-chief, the lady who pays the bills, the one and only Carmela Monk Crawford. And we are so excited for today's episode. We've got some really great friends on once again, and we are going to have a tremendous conversation. But as usual, we are here to do what we like to say, and that is to bring or find the hope in the headline. And I am so excited that we have today David Person, who is going to join us to talk with us about a very well-known controversy right now all over social media. Now, David Person is the owner of David Person Media. Since 1986, he's been working as a broadcaster, journalist, documentary director, and media consultant based in Huntsville, Alabama. His work has been featured nationally on NPR and in USA Today, and locally in the Huntsville Times and on WLRH-FM, WJOU-FM, WEUP-AM-FM, and WHNT-TV. Currently, David consults with various clients and develops projects with partners in Alabama and other states. He is featured on two podcasts, the Healthy Alabama podcast, which he hosts and produces, and the Alabama Politics This Week, which he co-hosts with columnist Josh Moon. David is also known in North Alabama as an advocate for human rights and social justice. He's an active member of the Madison County Remembrance Project, a partnership with the Equal Justice Initiative to commemorate the lives of lynching victims, the Future and Beyond, an annual diversity, equity, and inclusion conference, and the Rosa Parks Day Planning Committee, founded by State Representative Laura Hall to permanently commemorate the legacy of the Alabama civil rights icon. We are so grateful to have her. Carmela is a close friend of David Person. They have long history of doing great journalist work together while at Oakwood University, then Oakwood College. And we are so excited to have him, particularly today, because he most recently participated with the Rosa Parks Day Planning Committee for a rally protest against a Confederate statue at an Alabama public office, where he was advocating for the removal of that statue. And I'm so excited to get into this conversation. But first, I'd love for you to get a glimpse of some of what he said at this rally. Take a look.
So we are here today to say, as a community of Black people, white people, all people, that we reject that statue, we reject its place here on public property, and we say to the Madison County Commission that they need to act quickly to tear that thing down. Now, there are some who say that laws should not be broken and that this needs to be handled delicately and legally. We say to that the evil that represents can be tolerated no longer. And in the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said that some laws are unjust and need to be broken, we say to the Madison County Commissioner, and specifically to Madison County Commissioner Chair, or Commission Chair Dale Strong, break the law, tear that thing down now.
David.
Hey.
David is on the mic talking about tear it down, take this thing down.
Move the monument. Yes.
Move it. Move this monument. That is so funny. Tell us about that monument before I get out, because there's some things I'd like to talk about and set up, obviously. This is going on around the country. Everywhere you look. I was looking at the pictures of the statue in Richmond of Robert E. Lee. And I just, the base of that whole statue has Black Lives Matter all over it. It's a different statue now. And that thing came down. You're looking at Richmond's Monument Avenue, Stonewall Jackson, Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis, down on the ground. And even today, the news here in Baltimore, in our area, they have a big battleship that's in the Baltimore Harbor that's named after Supreme Court Justice. They call him Taney, but it's spelled Taney. It looks like Taney. But he was a Supreme Court Justice with the Dred Scott decision. And so he's the one that is, responsible for the decision that said, there are no rights that we are bound to respect for Black people. And so these things are coming down all around. I would like to know about what you were talking about in that clip. What was that statue? Why is that so meaningful for it to come down?
Well, first of all, let me say good morning to my dear friend Carmela, who has also been my editor, which has really been cool as I've written for Message in the past through the years, and we're going to talk about some of my future work with Message, and also say good morning to Claudia, who is my editor for this upcoming project that got with Message. So about the monument, it is a generic statue that pays tribute to the Confederate soldier, and it is tucked in a little corner near the Madison County Courthouse, which of course is the focal point, ostensibly is the focal point for justice in Madison County, Alabama. So many of us consider it an affront to justice that you would have a statue that reflects and epitomizes a celebration of white supremacy, which is what the Confederacy was, a celebration of white supremacy and the subjugation, the permanent codified subjugation of African people, people of color, Black people, at the very steps into the courthouse where justice is supposed to be equal and for everybody. So our contention is it does not need to be on public property, taxpayer subsidized property. It needs to be moved to another location or destroyed for all I care. But I'm perfectly fine with it being moved to another location. And so our objective is to put pressure on the Madison County Commission, specifically the chair of the commission, Chairman Dale Strong, to move the statue immediately. It was done in Mobile, Alabama. It was done in Birmingham. The University of Alabama is removing the names of Confederates from buildings. NASCAR has banned it, and of course, Alabama's a big NASCAR state. They've banned the Confederate flag. So there's no reason why this statue can't be moved now. And so we are insisting that he move it today.
Yeah, I think it was so interesting about these discussions surrounding the Confederate monuments and statues. It's so layered. But the biggest thing, what I'm hearing you say is you cannot accept this symbolism as innocuous in the halls of justice because it stands for exactly the opposite.
That's right.
Right?
That's exactly right.
I love it. In Richmond, and the reason why I keep going back to Richmond, because I think it's really somehow teachable, something that we can extend across the country with some of the lessons that we've learned with Richmond. Number one, what do you think? I love the fact that the mayor of Richmond is a brother. And what's his name? LeVar Stoney. Okay? LeVar, that's just like poetic justice. LeVar Stoney is like, bring these statues down. But he had a really interesting quote, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it. The brother said, we have two pandemics in our country right now, COVID-19 and racism. Stoney said, one is 6 months old, the other is 400 years old. Both are lethal, especially for Black and brown people.
Yeah, I agree with that. My only caveat to what he said is it really goes back further than 1619. It goes all the way back to when the land was stolen from the indigenous people. Absolutely. The indigenous nations that were here. So I think we have to begin to make sure the narrative is complete and corrected. You know, we people of African descent like to start it at 1619, but that's really not where it needs to start in terms of this country, this land, and this hemisphere. We've got to include the indigenous people as well.
Absolutely.
I love that. I'm sorry, were you gonna go? You was gonna say something, Claudia?
No, I'm just in full agreement. I think that, America's narrative of white supremacy does not start with the exploitation of African slaves. It most certainly begins with stolen land. And so it's critical that, we as Black people both not just advocate for our own liberty, for our own justice, but if we're truly going to be anti-racist, even in our own endeavors, we must also champion the importance of a revised history and a rewriting of an American narrative that takes indigenous people into consideration.
In fact, the narrative was exactly the thing. David and I sat and talked with Brian Stevenson a couple of years ago. And narrative is his number one thing. He's advocating, as we start this conversation, start it over again. We need to talk about what these things mean. And we need to bring out the ugly truth behind the symbolism and the monuments. So, and because only then can we face what's going on. Is that right?
I agree 100%. It's important not only for our quest for justice and equity in this country, that we help to build. I mean, it was built on stolen land and then built by stolen bodies, right? But in addition to that, it's clear to me that our white brothers and sisters need healing too. I'll never forget the story that Congressman John Lewis tells about how an old white man and a young white man came to his office one day. And he said that this white man, the older white man, confessed to him that he had been on the Edmund Pettus Bridge and that he was part of that force or that group of people who were cracking skulls on Bloody Sunday. And of course, John Lewis was assaulted and hurt in that protest. And he said he wanted to apologize to John Lewis for his role in that thing. So here's a man who's been carrying this burden of the evil he had done and the guilt for probably 50 years or so. And John Lewis said that he accepted the man's apology and they stood there in his office and cried together and hugged together. And the younger man who was there with him also joined in crying and hugging. And what that really tells us is that we all need this healing. All of us need to be freed from this virus, if you will, of racism and white supremacy.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The thing that I think is interesting, Brian Stevenson also talked about the fact that, you go to a South Africa and a Germany, and you don't see memorials today of Nazism. You don't see monuments to their leaders and their generals and their commanders and their armed forces. That's just not a part of the history that they want told anymore. What are we saying to people? Because in our neck of the woods, there's plenty of historical tourism that includes the Confederacy. When my children went through school, we went on history tours, which was fascinating to me. One thing that is so hurtful is that when you go through and you just don't see yourself in the history. Right. When you built this. But, anyway, what are you saying to people when they say, well, this is part of our history, good or bad, we need to still see this? What do you think?
I think what's being said is that we are superior. It is the continuation, the continued promulgation of white supremacy. That's what it is. It's saying that we have the right and the ability to disregard you and to disregard your feelings, to disregard the truth, the actual documentable truth about what happened to your ancestors and what's happening to you now. And so it's a grave immoral act to do this. And it's something we have to push back on. What I'm happy about is that this generation, and when I say this generation, I don't just mean the younger people, but I mean those of us who are alive today, all of us, we seem to be experiencing an awakening that we haven't seen in this country perhaps ever. In fact, I would argue ever. Look at the protests. I look at some of these protests and I see more white people than black people. And it makes me think that perhaps now we are turning a corner where we have a new generation of Americans who are ready to say, regardless of race, regardless of gender, or any of these other, artificial things that we use to label us and separate us, that it's time for justice, it's time for truth, and it's time to dismantle, the structure of white supremacy, which of course has been codified in laws and policies and practices and social mores, but it's also time to reject the very premise of the idea that one race is superior to another simply because of the color of its skin.
Yeah.
I'm in full agreement. I think as well, this conversation is also intimately attached to the fact that it is your white privilege that allows you to remember the Confederacy as a joyful, beautiful time, right? I remember a clip that was in Golden Girls, and so it's like Blanche is remembering the Confederacy and the banquets, and we would dance and drink tea on the porch and whatnot, and Don Cheadle's character is like, yeah, I was bringing the tea, like, you know what I mean? Like, and so it's very interesting that I think what we're having right now is we're having this huge clash. White people are most certainly remembering their history, the history of the rebellion, the history of the South, in accordance with their traditions and how they spent time with their families and things of this nature. But they are selectively forgetting slavery. They're selectively forgetting the lynchings. They're selectively forgetting very real physical and psychological trauma that is attached to that time period. And so it is your white privilege that allows you to say, you know what, that was our bad. The more we think about it, we don't like it. So we're just going to erase it and pretend it didn't happen. Yeah, and we're only going to remember this aspect of it. And those of us who are or were the victims of that violence are in 2020 saying, you no longer get the right to erase this kind of trauma as though it just flat out did not happen. No, you are going to face it, and you need to remove the images and symbols that were supporting and perpetuating that violence.
Right. Well, I think there are people that are certainly being selective. And the real problem, I think, is that it's not just that they're being selective. It's that, it's been baked into or burned into our institutions. So you've got it not only in statues, you've got it on buildings, you've got it on the names of schools. You've got it, streets that are named after people and highways. And then you also have, these practices that have been in place. A lot of people are unaware of the fact that the very way that the housing industry was structured and developed in this country, it was designed specifically to provide opportunities to white people at the expense of Black people. And so this has become, baked into our culture and into our politics and into the way that we do business and industries. You look around and you wonder, well, why are neighborhoods segregated? Many people have been conditioned to think, well, it's just because people like to congregate this way. No, it's not. That's not the reason. The reason is that governments designed and planned their cities based on race and class.
Right, right. You know what is interesting is that this goes beyond symbolism. And some people may say, well, this is, these simply monuments, artistic depictions, as we see in Virginia in particular, just, how many years ago, just a few short years ago in Charlottesville, where the climate feels like it is welcoming. You have the influx of people who are like-minded with those symbols and those monuments. Then you see people having to come together and rally, and you saw the alt-right show up there in Charlottesville because it feels comfortable. This feels like our narrative. This feels like home for us. And then the counter protesters, and that's how we saw the death of Heather Heyer, is because there is a real outcome, an outgrowth to me of what happens with this symbolism. But, the last thing I will say about that situation is that what's funny is that in Virginia, here you've got a governor who they were calling for his resignation a couple of years ago because they remember because of his yearbook has him dressed in Klan robes and at one point and at another point in blackface. And so here he's had to confront his own dalliance in this intoxication of a so-called white supremacy. And he's had to confront that and now come and turn around and say, let's make it so that each municipality, every local organization can decide whether or not they want to bring these things down. And he's paving the way to have that come down because he's had to take that introspection. I find this very interesting. David, this is good stuff.
I want to say something about that, if I may. I think you are pointing us in a very interesting direction with that story, because the reality is, I think if we're going to have a productive resolution to this whole thing of dismantling white supremacy and white privilege, I think we have to give space for the fact that white people living in a certain era or living through a certain era are more likely to have been passively racist or overtly racist than not. I think we have to allow for that. And we have to understand that, actions of 30, 40 years ago, maybe even actions of 20 years ago, can't be held against a person. I mean, we can condemn those acts, and we should, but we have to make an allowance for people to grow, for people to change. In other words, we have to extend grace to people, So I'm not going to look at my white brother over there and say, because you wore blackface 20 years ago, you're a bigot. No, I'm going to say, what are you doing today? Today is what defines your bigotry. Today is what defines whether or not you are ascribing to white supremacy or whether or not you are actively, gleefully indulging in your white privilege. The measure for me is today.
I think that's very well said. Love it. It's
so hard for me though.
I get it. I get it.
I agree. Like, I fundamentally, even spiritually agree with everything that you've said. And I think the truth that is in it as well is that, yes, we are in a society where 90% of white people were either complicit or participatory in racism or white supremacy in some way. So I totally agree with that. I guess where I struggle is that, how do I know that you've really changed, or that you are, or that society and culture in the world at large has just shifted so that such behavior is no longer socially acceptable? And now that you are being called out, you are wanting to backtrack on some of your choices and decisions. I think that I don't want to be cynical or pessimistic, but I am just a bit uneasy at just accepting that all these white people coming out now wanting to read White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo and wanting to read Stand from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi are all of a sudden now on the other side and are anti-racist.
Well, I think you make a good point, and I don't think that's really what I'm saying. I think you make an excellent point, Claudia. I think what I'm saying is that we have to give people grace to grow and change. This is the beginning. For many people, this is the beginning of change, but we want to nurture change. We don't want to say to them, oh, wait a minute, you can't change this yet because I'm still angry about the fact that you did this, and this. You know, we have to allow them grace to change, encourage them to change. And I think if people are taking the steps that show through their actions that they are openly renouncing white supremacy and racism, that's probably about as good as we're going to get. And, you know, God has to deal with the rest, right? I mean, that's what we believe. Right. Yeah. You know, man looks on the outward appearance, God looks on the heart. So, you know, we can measure what we see, and then God deals with the internal structures of a person's psyche, and hopefully, you know, will help them to evolve into, you know, move from merely, as you're saying, not being racist, quote unquote, or even being racist, to not being racist, to being anti-racist.
Agreed.
But that's my friend. You see what I'm saying right there? That's my friend right there. No, but you know what? I love the grace, and I heard you say something like that on a program that I was watching you on, David. And I think there's a certain measure of grace that has to be injected into this idea, into this moment, into this season that you know, in all of our in all areas, whether it's the schools, whether it's in our neighborhoods, whether it's in the church. I know for me, Claudia knows, our producer Robert knows, for months I was struggling with the depiction of the second coming of Christ, this huge mural outside my office. And I made the same points that you made, that it was white supremacy, or a sense that this is the way I would like to depict this. And this is Jesus with blonde golden curls, and all of the angels with blonde golden curls. And their first person that they're going to reach was, you know, a white person. And even the dogs were in the picture. And when Jesus came back, and Black people and any other people of color were not there. And so I made that point to folks. And I said, this is not just the sense of superiority that this is conveying, but it is privilege that says I can put this up here, even though it's hurtful. But now that picture is down.
Beautiful.
And there's a conversation that has happened around that. And I sense not just a conversation around it, but a heart change that said, I never looked at it like that. I'm sorry. I didn't know. It was just a picture to me. But you know, for me, they heard me when I say every time I pass that, it says something. Anyway, I'm sorry. We got a lot.
But that's great. That's greght. And I love the fact that you spoke out, and that's what we have to do. We have to challenge white privilege and white supremacy, but I think we have to do it in a way that's productive, meaning, you know, not assuming the worst about people. You know, people, you know, none of us controlled the circumstances of our birth, our race, the families we were born into, the cultures, the country. So we all have been shaped by things that were outside of our control. But once we reach an age of consciousness where we can really begin to think critically about who we are and where we are and what that all means, that's when accountability, I think, starts. So you're holding people accountable, and it made a difference. That's awesome. I love that. I love that, especially considering that the church, and I don't just mean the Adventist church, I mean the Christian church, has been one of the main one of the main promulgators and protectors of white privilege and white supremacy in our country. I love it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, man, we could talk about this, all day, guys. I know that, this is, and even once Carmela went to white Jesus, I had to just refrain myself. I was like, Claudia, we don't have another 30 minutes for that. So just put that back in your pocket. But so David, you actually have a new podcast that you're doing with us. Could you share just a little bit with us? What is this podcast? What is it about? What do you kind of hope to kind of do with this media?
Well, I tell you what, this podcast, Black Teens Being, has been just a project of love. I mean, I've so enjoyed working on it, just artistically, journalistically, and the concept is very simple. It's to examine what it means to be a Black teenager in this current era that we live in, this day and time. Now, when I say this day and time, I'm not thinking specifically about this COVID era or this post George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks era. I'm just talking about just generally what it means in this sort of general time frame. And so what I did was I found Black teenagers because I'm obviously way past that time frame myself. So I found Black teenagers, an interesting collection. One is a young man who was raised or is being raised by a single mother, who's had some flirtations with the law. One is a very bright young woman who identifies as bisexual, who is, I think, 16. I think Gabby is 16 now. And she's really one of the main voices for the series. And then another young man who, at the time we started our interviews, I think he was 13, just beginning to enter into the world of being a teenager. And so they talk, we have them talking about in their own voices, talking about their experiences. And then we hear from some of their parents and we hear from some experts, and we really try to frame the Black teenage experience as much as one can do in 5 or 6 episodes. And we try to make it so that it had a sound and a feel that would be relatable to teens. And that would be an honest reflection of the teen experience. So it's got a little hip hop kind of feel to it.
No, it's completely, not just a little. It's awesome. It's a very nice. I don't even know what the best, most up to date word is, but that's what it is. So it's good stuff. It's good stuff. And David, wasn't there someone? There was a story or something. Was someone attempted suicide, and that was part of your impetus to really visit some of the, whether it's the trauma or the pressures that our young people are feeling right now.
Yeah,
am I right?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. There was a young man in the Huntsville community, Nigel Shelby, who actually did commit suicide, and he killed himself. It's very sad. He killed himself because he was being bullied because of his sexual orientation. And this is a young African American child. He was, I think, 15, if I remember correctly, at the time. And this became a national story, even though it happened here in Huntsville. And his mother actually retained attorney Benjamin Crump, the same Benjamin Crump who's working with, these the families of these of the Floyd family and other families who are experiencing the aftermath of their relatives being killed by the police. And she retained him to investigate the circumstances surrounding his death, because his mother and Attorney Crump, I think, also believe that his death could have been prevented. His suicide could have been prevented had certain things taken place. And so we actually also have included interviews with Benjamin Crump and his mother in one episode of the podcast, and also LGBTQ activist David Johns, all in one episode, where we examine Nigel's story and their perception of what happened and how this could have been prevented. Because this is a reality that we are living with in this day and time, in religious communities, in our church and other churches. People struggle with this, but the reality is, like it or not, agree with it or not, more young people are identifying as being part of the LGBTQIA community, or being on that spectrum. And I think it is naive of us to think that we can just close our eyes, stick our heads in the sand, and pretend this doesn't happen or this isn't happening.
Right.
And regardless of how one feels about, theologically or spiritually about gays and gay rights or whatever, surely we all ought to be able to say that no 15-year-old child should be feeling so overwhelmed by his perception, if you want to call it that, his quote perception unquote of his orientation, and people's response to his perception of it, that he kills himself. Surely none of us should be comfortable with that, no matter how we feel about the larger issue.
Or his aloneness. None of us are comfortable.
Right.
Should not be comfortable with that. That's powerful. Yeah. I can't wait. I've heard, Claudia, this thing is what message is about, and I hope people will listen to it and share it. It's good work, David.
Listen, awesome. we are so excited about it, and so we want to give you a quick preview. Take a listen right now to Message in Your Ear, the first series on Black teens being.
Message. Magazine in your ear.
Being a teenager. For me, it means discovering who I am. And who I want to be as an adult. Like discovering my passion and what my morals are, and everything that I kind of want to build upon in the future. So it's sort of like the initial incident in my life.
As a black teenager, they already gonna look at you as a menace. They gonna look at you as a menace. You're not just gonna pop up and they gonna think you're a great person. You feel me? They look at us like we ain't built for anything. 9 times out of 10, when you look at a black teenager, first thing pop to your mind, oh, he ain't going to college. That's a dropout. That's how they look at us.
Yo, what's up now?
Celebration of this amazing new podcast that is really celebrating and giving voice to our youth. I really wanted to bring on 2 youth that I know of that are doing some really amazing work. And not only are we going to talk with them about what it means to be a teen, but we also want to talk with them just about entrepreneurship and their businesses, because these teens, yes, they do, started and are running their very own businesses, CEOs, prior to COVID, in the midst of COVID, and after COVID. So I am so excited to welcome first the lady, Miss Joelle Hinds. She is the CEO, founder, and visionary of the one and only Slay All Day Nails. And I am also excited to welcome my nephew, Darryl Josiah of D's Chicken. Chef visionary CEO founder. And the both of them are just such amazing young people. So to start the conversation with the both of you, Joelle, I'd like you to answer first. What do you feel like it means to be a teen?
That's a hard question. For me, I don't know. I feel like it's just about finding yourself and learning who you are, and then learning lessons that will take you far in life. That's what I feel like is a teen.
That's great. That's great. Darryl, what about you? What do you think?
I agree with Joelle. I feel like being a teen is like the year in between a kid and an adult, where you're able to learn about yourself and basically being more yourself until you become an adult.
That's awesome. So Joelle, tell us a little bit about your business. I've given them the name, but what is Slay All Day Nails? What is this about?
So Slay All Day Nails is a press-on nail shop. It's basically like a manicure delivered to your house. So basically you can select your design, and then your nails will come, and then you can put them on in like a quick manicure, so you don't have to spend like a lot of time at the salon.
Hallelujah.
Oh, so this is a product.
The Lord is in it.
So you make the designs, you customize them, and then deliver them.
Yes, I do.
That is
awesome.
So innovative. That's really innovative. I didn't realize that's what it was. Wow.
Awesome.
Wow. So what made you start this business?
So when I was 13, my mom started allowing me to wear press-ons, but I was still 12 at the time. And so I started doing more research. And then in my research, I wanted to start my own business.
Wow, that's awesome. So how has your business been impacted by COVID in any way? Has that helped it? Has it hurt it?
So for COVID, during COVID, my business actually grew a lot because I was featured on like the Shade Room on Instagram. And then
nice.
Influencers.
Whoa.
I know.
Wow.
Let's go, Joelle.
Wow.
Come through, sis.
How did the Shade Room find out about you?
So I'm pretty sure it's because of my hashtag, because I use the hashtag Black Owned Business.
Ah.
For Juneteenth, they wanted to like highlight different Black owned businesses. So I was one of them that they featured.
That's awesome, man.
Yes.
So sales have gone up in COVID, huh?
Yes.
That's right. People need their nails done. Shoot.
It's real.
It's
Okay.
real. I need
That
mine
is
done now.
awesome. That is awesome. So Darryl, D's Chicken. Now that I know of Joelle's business, I will be buying because we're bare out here. We're in the middle of quarantine. We need some help. So Slay All Day Nails will definitely be getting some love from me. D's Chicken now always had the love because at least prior to COVID, I do not want to, afflict my family over there with any illnesses. So I have not had the privilege of eating Darryl's chicken. But if you have not eaten Darryl Josiah's chicken, you are sleeping in a cave, and the Lord has not come to let you know about the goodness of his presence. And so what you need is you need a good lemon pepper. You need a good Old Bay. And my man has his own barbecue sauce. I'm sorry, Darryl. I'm probably talking too much. Please
do not get Claudia started on chicken. Oh,
listen, all right?
It must be good. She's like,
no, it's actually lit. I need you to understand it's actually lit. So Darryl,
you're about to get the Holy Ghost over chicken. That's something. I've never seen that before.
He's here. He's already fallen. He's already here. All right. Darryl, please tell us, why did you start D's Chicken? How did you start it? Tell us about this business, friend.
All right. So first of all, D's Chicken was first started as just a little summer job, but I was too young to start a summer job. So I was like, what could I do to make a little bit of money over the summer? So I started watching entrepreneur videos, how to make your own business and all that stuff. And I first started wanting to wash cars to get some money. But then I was like, I don't think I want to wash cars all day. So they always said, do something that you love. Always do what you love. I was like, I like making chicken. People think it's really good. So let me make a chicken business. Let me sell some chicken over the summer. And it just taken off from there.
Wow.
That is amazing. Now,
Wow.
how many flavors do you offer, friend?
Right now, we got 3. We got Maryland's classic Old Bay, the well-known lemon pepper, and the well-known and the well-loved barbecue.
Yes.
I
That
have
has
a
a low
question.
beef chicken twist to it, though.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
have a question from the background. As a chicken cook myself, what style do you do your chicken? Is it baked? Is it fried?
Okay, so fried chicken is not healthy. We know that as a fact. So I use the oven right here as my broiler that gives a nice fried kind of crispy taste to it, but it's not fried.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
So
okay.
crispy, tastes like fried chicken, but it's healthier.
So one more comment. You and I are going to have a contest because
All right.
I'm a grill guy myself. So we're going to have to discuss this some more. All right.
All right, for sure.
Listen, we'll make it happen. It'll be on message. Robert, our audio visual guy, and Darryl, Josiah's chicken cook-off. We'll make that happen. I'll be the taster because David and Carmela can't have none, and that's all right. That is all right.
Vegan, plant-based, baby.
Vegan.
Plant power.
Yeah, there we go.
Plant power.
Green power. You know what? I was going to ask both of you, from what I understand, and I just so admire your entrepreneurship and that spirit of independence and the fact that you are creating your own wealth and a legacy of that. And I know, Joelle, especially your father, I know has instilled some of this. This is his big thing. And it's probably because you inspired him to do all these kinds of things. Like, look at my kids. I need to write about this. But here's the 3 things that I understand that go into a good business, a viable business, or one, outside of the ideas and everything like this, but those skills and the training, and then 2, the financial backing, and then 3, a really good social capital, which would be, your networks and the relationships with people around you. Tell us just real succinctly about the different things that went into your business to keep it going. Did you get the training? Did you have some financial support? Do your mom and them and grandmoms help out? How's that working?
So I actually, before I started my business, I took a camp from my dad on how to start a business. So that was basically my training. And I still basically have like advice from him all the time because he already has his own business. And financially, I had some money, but I worked like little odd jobs around the house, like cleaning the fridge and stuff like that, to build up some money to fund my business in the beginning.
That's good. And what about the support? Do you get orders from like your cousins and your parents' friends or anything like that?
So yes, most like in the beginning of my business, most of my orders, like I knew their names and my dad and my mom knew the people, but now it's like different because a lot of my orders come from people that I don't even know.
Oh, awesome.
Isn't that exciting?
It's exciting, but it's just like I don't know. It's like that means like you're getting out there when that starts happening. So it's like really crazy to see.
Are you going to have to move out of the house with your production and go on Shark Tank and ask for money for some manufacturing space or get in with somebody?
I don't know. I don't know if that would be something that I'll ever do.
Oh, okay. All right.
So how many colors and shapes do you offer?
So I have 5 shapes, and like right now, I think I have maybe 8 designs on my site, but soon I'm coming out with the summer collection, which I'm really excited for.
Ooh, now what is in the summer collection?
In the summer collection, we just have like some different like pastel colors that people will really like for summer.
I love it. I love it. Darryl.
What about you, Darryl? Tell us about your background and what you had going into this business.
So with my background, I've always really wanted to be an entrepreneur since I was young. I've always wanted to have my own business like my dad, and just really wanting to work by myself. I never really wanted a boss, to be honest. So
speak that. Yes.
So getting older and all that stuff, my dad always really wanted to help me achieve that goal. He would talk ideas over with me. I had a lot of little ideas, like when those rubber band bracelets were a thing back then. I used to make those and try and sell them, but my dad was like, "You gotta think of a good, solid idea. You gotta do this. You gotta do that, so you could go off and all that stuff." So that's really where my background for entrepreneurship has started.
Mm-hmm. Do you get a lot of support from your family and everybody?
Yep. We're trying to branch out to doing bigger and better things to try and get out there more. So.
Well, all I'm going to say is when you get the vegan chicken line going, let me know.
Yes,
right.
sir.
Let me know.
I'm in it. Just throw the vegan chicken in with that barbecue, and I think you'll be good. Okay, you know what I'm saying?
Man, well, it was so good to have all you guys on as usual. Joelle, everybody is in, and this is Joelle and Darryl. That's why I'm going to give this to both of you. Everyone is trying to figure out how they can support your business. All right. So Joelle, what is your website? Where can people follow you on social media? How can they support your business?
My website is slayalldaynails.com, and my Instagram and Facebook is @slayalldaynails with 2 S's at the end.
Love it. Love it. Darryl, what about you?
For me, I just opened up a new Instagram page for D's Chicken, dschicken.dmv on Instagram.
Love it. Love it. Guys, as usual, we try our best to find the hope in the headlines. So, Joelle, I'll start with you. I'll go to Darryl, and then I'll end with you, Mr. Person. What do you guys think? Just right now, I mean, we've talked about everything from monuments to being a teen to starting a business, and everything that you know and think about in society that's going on in the world right now. What is a word of hope that you would want to give to the listeners? Joelle?
Ooh, that's hard. I'm not really an inspirational person, but
yeah, you are.
I really am positive and hopeful that change is going to come, and that, we are going to get justice for the things that have been done to us. I mean, that's really all I have to say, I guess. Like, I hope change is really going to come.
That's good. That's great. Darryl, what about you? Where do you see any hope anywhere and anything?
Yeah, I definitely see hope. I try and be positive as much as I can. I definitely think Black people are going to get our justice that we need. I think that COVID hopefully will pass soon. I think we should stay inside more so the coronavirus doesn't spread. And it's all up to God. It's all up to God. So, yeah.
I love it. Mr. Person, what is the hope in the headline?
Yeah, for me, I go back to Dr. King's sermon, Loving Your Enemies. And in that sermon, he said, in the best of us, there's some evil. And in the worst of us, there's some good. And that we have to reconcile that in our hearts and minds so that we can begin to see each other as human beings. And when we see each other as human beings, flawed but human, we can then begin to love each other and to embrace our commonalities. So when it comes to white privilege and white supremacy, which we've talked a lot about, I think there is hope beyond that if we begin to see each other across racial lines as human beings. Flawed, we need to challenge and hold ourselves accountable, hold each other accountable for our flaws. But we also have to see those flaws as truly being indicative of our humanity. And in that humanity, there is hope when there is love.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Make sure that you are following Mr. David Person. Are you on social media, David?
I am. Old guys are on social media too. So I am on Instagram, David Person on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook as well.
All right. So guys, make sure you are following David Person on Instagram and on Facebook. If you want to get the new summer edition, as I do, make sure you go to slayalldaynails.com, get your nails ready and on point, and make sure you are following Joelle at Slay All Day Nails with 2 S's. Of course, D's Chicken is back in business, baby. For those of us who are in the DMV, we are not staying at the crib and eating in the kitchen this time, though. We are only doing curbside pickup. So if you want your good barbecue, your lemon pepper, or your Maryland Old Bay, make sure you reach out to D's Chicken on social media, D's Chicken DMV, and put your order in to support these young Black-owned businesses. And of course, we here at Message Magazine are excited to promote these Black-owned businesses, and ourselves are a Black-owned business. And so we want to remind you that this is a project, this is a conversation that is always hosted and sponsored by the oldest Black magazine in the country, Black Christian magazine in the country. And so this is hosted and sponsored by Message, and this can only happen when you support Message. So please go to our website at www.messagemagazine.com and make sure that you are supporting our ministry. We have so many products. We have so much available to you. We want to get you Bible studies. We want to get you tracks. We want to continue to point you to other podcasts and other content. We've got David Person's podcast, Message in Your Ear, Black Teens Being. We have Liberation Library with Carl McRoy. We have so much that we just want to continue to provide for you. And so we just need you to continue to donate to Message Magazine. Make sure you're subscribed and make sure that you're getting the brand new issue. Okay. We had Pastor Trisha Wynn Payne last week. She, in the Michelle Obama-esque cover, graced our Message Magazine issue. And so we just want to encourage you to get this latest print issue as we talk about powerful testimonies of healing. And so we know that you are going to be blessed by that edition. And we just pray that you always make sure you are joining us live here every single Thursday, 11 a.m. It's the same spot. It's just a different topic, as I always say. So make sure you are visiting and subscribing and donating on our website at www.messagemagazine.com and follow us on social media at Message1898. I am yours truly. It's always a pleasure. Have a great one. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Claudia, I think one other thing that we have to remember,
our behavior is definitely influenced or impacted by
Claudia, I think the one other thing that we have to remember
we're just
is
excited
that
with the powers of Zoom and the like
want to be
Claudia,
I think
the eating of certain animals
is that we have plenty of people that want to be ministry. Claudia,
right?
I think one other thing that we have to remember is that we have plenty of people
ABC affiliates
that
here
want
in the
to be
United States.
ministry.
Not telling the truth and going back to let's just dip
some of the issues. And so we live our lives working. If you think about
Claudia, I think the one other thing that we have to remember is that
I'm telling you, we handle the heavy stuff. We do the heavy stuff.